Welcome to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. The Vancouver Writers Fest connects people to exceptional books, ideas, and dialogue through year-round programming that ignites a passion for words and the world around us. I'm Leslie Hurtig, Artistic Director, and I'm very happy to share this conversation featuring Leanne Betasamosake Simpson in conversation with award-winning poet Dionne Brand. This event was recorded live on October 6, 2020, as part of Vancouver Writers Fest's fall season. The Vancouver Writers Fest carries out its work, including this event you're about to listen to, on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This event features acclaimed writer, scholar, and musician Leanne Betasamosake Simpson speaking with Dionne Brand about her new book, Noopiming, The Cure for White Ladies.
Good evening, everyone, and it's such a pleasure to be here tonight with Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. I feel like this is a continuation of a conversation we had several years ago, but this time it is with this brilliant novel of yours. And before we begin talking with each other, I'd like to invite you, Leanne, to read for a few minutes from your novel, Noopiming.
Thank you. I'm going to start reading the very beginning of the novel, and the first chapter is called Solidification. Once you move through cold, there is Pacific. Once you move through Pacific, there is placid. Once you move through placid, there is a condition of expanse. And it was in that condition of expanse that held me. I heard them singing above me. Mashkawaje fell through the ice to find quiet, to get out of the wind, to visit with Namegos. They all sang. Mashkawaje stitches up the hole. They are so cold they can't move. They are frozen stiff. The lake is their blanket. They all sang. Mashkawaje is frozen stiff, still, calm. No one knows if they're coming back. They all sang. Akawenze is fishing through the ice with a spear. They brought a line of beads. They will wait patiently. They will wait patiently until Mashkawaje is done their visit. The singing and drumming came every night from a distance. Different choirs every evening at dusk, marking the passage of time, reminding me that there is still love. You see, tragedy happened again. The details don't matter because the details are hopeless, overwhelmed, shut down. Know this. After 2 years, the best parts of me are still frozen in the lake. My limbic system, its best friend, the prefrontal cortex, and the hollow pumping organ in which I keep benevolence. The only one that regularly comes to visit is Akawenze. In the winter, they park their truck on the ice, drill a hole with the auger, and fish until the cold makes their bones crack. As soon as the ice is off the lake, Akawenze is back in their boat with a torch and a sort of pitchfork for spearing pickerel. In the dead of summer, Akawenze sneaks back before first light in their canoe, before the cottagers and their jet skis are out. In the fall, they sprinkle tobacco around me and sing. My world is muted. I look out. If something upsets me, I just wait and the upset passes. I sit beside. Sometimes I remember the other me before I was frozen in the lake. I remember caring and engaging and the sharpness of unmuted feeling. I remember hopeless connection. I don't feel stuck in part because I don't feel anything. Their song isn't wrong. The ice is like a warm weighted blanket. My form dissolved when tragedy came, and if I am fluid, the ice is container. There are ashes in my eyes. I am so far inside myself, like Miss Guadesi on a full fast inside time, pulled inside their organs, inside their turtle shell, inside the sediments of the lake, while the ice world forms on top, oblivious to the outside, with body as lake. And there is solace in being cut off, and there is freedom enmeshed within that state. Know this: being frozen in the lake is another kind of life. Know this: it is unclear how long before I will be done with my visit. It is unclear how long visiting takes. Know this: visiting is more of a dance than an event. Akewenze is my will, Nanatuk is my lungs, Mindamoya is my conscience, Sabe is my marrow, Adik is my nervous system, Asin is my eyes and ears, Lucy is my brain. I believe everything these seven say because ice distorts perception and trust replaces critique, examination, interrogation. I believe everything these seven say, even though. I believe everything these seven say, even though their truths are their own, not mine. I believe in the absence of my own heart, I will accept the hearts of these seven. The geese fly overhead in the sheer grace of a carefully angled formation designed to take them elsewhere. There are still stars. There are still stars.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I've said, I think that this novel is as philosophically generative as it is stylistically original. And that opening that you read that lets us all into it through this figure frozen in the lake, whom, as you've read, who says being frozen in the lake is another kind of life. Like that is such a vast concept for that we walk into the novel with, right?
Yeah.
I think this novel is a really expansive work, and it explores, the indivisibility of beings, the old woman, the old man, the caribou, the stone, the ice. You've pulled together all these elements, and they are all kind of watching and grieving and thinking and acting and listening amidst a kind of ongoing urgency of capital life, right? But they are ceaseless. They traverse the novel ceaselessly as they travel the land, the space, the earth, right? And their survival means that they kind of daily and collectively reconstruct existence, whether in the city or in the forest. I really think that the novel is sort of far ahead. I mean, I read it, and you're breathing with it in this beautiful way, and your language is, of course, so beautiful too, that I think cumulatively you've kind of created this or insisted this cosmography, right? Am I talking too much? No. I really think that you can sit with this novel and read it over and over and over again. It's doing some philosophical work, and it's working with time and breath and thought. And I feel that it will last and last. I say that genuinely and seriously and lovingly to you. Can you speak of its beginnings, like its conceptual framework, its architecture? How did you come by it? How did you hold it all together?
Well, first, thank you so much for saying that, because I think that was my intention, and sort of all along the way with this book, there's been people that have said this is going to be a difficult book for readers. It doesn't spoon feed readers, that the structure isn't what they're used to, the stories and what they're used for. This is going to be a challenge, and that was something that was okay with me, as long as there was one person that was gonna say the things that you just said. So I feel very affirmed and grateful for that. I think it starts from a place of refusal, of refusing colonial worlds and capital worlds, refusing the gender binary, refusing the structure of a novel. And that was something that I didn't do on purpose, because I did set out to try to write something longer form,
Hmm.
but the structure for me was so confining, and it was so um it was a box that I couldn't fit into. And so I wanted to really center relationality in this book
Mm.
and relationships, and focus in on the complexities and the network of relationships as place, and have that become sort of the setting of the novel. I wanted to center um, joy and
Mm.
humor and hospitality and generosity and kindness. I wanted to acknowledge that for Indigenous peoples, we have high levels of trauma, but I didn't want to center that trauma. I wanted to push it to the margins
Mhm.
and place this world building, this continual world building, this idea of continually giving birth to new worlds, even if those worlds are continually being destroyed,
Mm.
and sort of center that. So I think the architecture of this book is really those seven characters and the relationship between those seven characters, because I wanted that to form sort of a network, and that to form the reality
Mhm.
through which you experience the book. I wanted those relationships to be really full, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. I wanted the relationality to become a home place.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. The language too, because part of the architecture, in a sense, is the language, the way you move into different registers of language, right? So some more expository, but then some more poetic. Talk about that, because it seems to me that um, the language of the book and the worlds that you create um, are kind of inseparable, right? Um, and it seems that each of those worlds needs that language, right?
I think that I've always heard uh, I've always heard Anishinaabe older people say that our language, my language, is something that creates, it is our worldview, is a repository of the worldview, is something
Mhm.
that was designed very specifically to, the structure of it was designed very specifically to communicate our ethics and our
Mhm.
philosophy around centering relationships, around reciprocity, around sharing, around generosity, around consent, around all of these practices.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to I'm not a fluent speaker, and I wanted to take that idea and
Mm.
see what I could do with English, and see what I could do with using sort of Anishinaabe language as a window, and using the language, the structure of the language, breaking it down, seeing some of the poetics in that, and seeing what I could make, um, given the skills that I have, because I think that's where we are as a community right now. That's what the world building project is. Things are not. There's been an incredible amount of harm and violence from colonialism, and so we don't. The tools that we have available to us are not pristine.
Mhm. Mhm. But of course you can hear that language, because that language sort of survives not only in terms of the tongue, but of sensibilities too, right?
Right.
I'm suggesting or
Yeah.
thinking from what you've said, and so that language pops in and out in a sense as a kind of salvage, right?
Right.
Or the sound of it anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you sort of translate the sound, even if the sound um, is spoken in English, but
Yeah.
it has this kind of, that's lovely, yeah. And so it afforded you a bigger window too.
I think so. I mean, I
Yeah.
think a good example of this is the word bedabin, which appears near the end of the book, and it's if you split, it's a word that means dawn, literally, if you were to look it up in the online dictionary.
Right.
But I understand it as like that very first light that is coming up over the horizon before the sun rises. So it's the first light of the day. And if you split the word up into its tiny words, the be means the future is coming at you. The da is that home place or
Mm-hmm.
the present. And ba is a suffix that we would put on the end of someone's name after they had passed. So it's the past.
Oh,
So it's this
wow.
idea that that first light
Yeah,
is the present, and the present
right.
is the future and the past collapsing in on each other. So
Yeah,
taking that idea
right,
and sort of centering it gave me a different perspective on time and on place, and sort
right.
of rather than focus on the future, the idea of the present became really, really important to me.
Yeah, that is fabulous. I love that. I wish you could say it over again for me. I'll go look at this over again. You've pulled so many elements together here. Um, the book is, and these words are inadequate. I'm about to say the book is sort of, fable and realist together. It's past, present, future, as you just said together. We're on Earth. We're in the water. We're in the city. We're in the forest. I don't know what I'm asking you from there, but because you've just explained so much of it. But we begin with a character who is in the ice, and their relation to the world of they have a relation to the world of the novel. So we enter through that person, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and this being is waiting, watching, from whom we learn that being frozen in the lake is another kind of life. They say. Why do you begin the novel there? And what does that vantage point afford? Talk about this being. Yeah.
Mashkawaje is a word that means he, she, they are frozen in the ice. And
Mm,
so I think the vantage point of Mashkawaje is crucial for the novel because it's crucial to my Indigenous experience of colonialism, which has
mm,
been one that has been violent. It's caused harm. I carry scars and wounds. And I think many Indigenous writers have this discussion about how to truth tell, about how to tell our stories
mhm,
that are imbued with horrible things in a way that doesn't cause further harm, in a way that doesn't allow that tragedy to overtake the
mhm.
whole story, in a way that doesn't become sort of trauma porn that is easily consumed
Right.
by whiteness. So Mashkawaja has had this trauma, and they're shut down, they're disassociated, they're unfeeling, they are frozen. And because of that, they are utterly reliant on their community, their chosen family of these seven
Mm,
beings,
right.
to support them and to nurture them until the ice starts to melt a little bit. And so,
Mm,
in a sense, this is a safe place because their body has shut down in a way to allow them to heal and allow them to process. But
right.
it also, I think, speaks to that collectivity that is so important, um, in terms of supporting and nurturing and caretaking that being. So I wanted to have a really gentle, like almost a hesitant beginning to the novel. I
Mhm,
wanted to have one where that kind of tragedy was acknowledged, but then not centered.
mhm,
And I wanted to really also think of water and frozen water because
mhm,
of where we live,
mhm.
um, as metaphor and as an element of our worlds and of world building.
Yeah. No, I find that figure fascinating in the sense of, yes, of course, um, we are, some catastrophe has happened, but it has not managed to fully destroy us. That that there are parts of us that rescue. It is possible to rescue ourselves. We are not the we are not the horror,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So I find that kind of that cool, waiting thoughtfulness, um, as part of the recovery of one's being.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. talk about some of the other characters in the text and their relation to this one, or what we inefficiently, as I think, call character. Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
those
yeah.
people. Yeah, let's talk about people.
Sabe is a character that is first appears in Islands of Decolonial Love, and then again in this Accent of Being Lost. And it's a character that I fell in love with, and um, some readers will interpret that character as an elder. Sometimes people make the assumption that it's Nana Bush. Other times, people see a Bigfoot character, which is part of a spiritual being in my culture and in some other indigenous cultures. So it's a very beloved kind of caretaking character. Akewenze, Ake means land, and Akewenze is someone who is returning to the land, so an older man usually, although they're using the they them pronouns. So they're sort of allied with Sabe and Mindamoya. Mindamoya is a word that means old woman, often the one who holds everything together. A dick is a caribou. In this part of Ontario, in pre-colonial times, there were caribou in this part of the world, and so it's one of those species. It's one of those ancestors that doesn't live here anymore. Has gone extinct in this part of the world, and so I wanted to sort of explore a relationship with something that doesn't exist or that has been lost. So it's very much a spiritual characteristic that the characters learn about through going to an art exhibit that took place in Peterborough with witch and artist Janine Frina Jutley. And so they learn sort of in solidarity with indigenous people from the north who still have caribou. Nanatik is a maple tree, and that character has appeared before in my work. I think of those characters as sort of my oldest ancestors in this place. We have trees that are 350 or 400 years old, and so I think about what those beings have witnessed over the course of the last 400 years. Asin and Lucy are younger characters who are searching for belonging, and in this sort of fragmented colonial world, and who are learning to be world builders. And so these 7 characters interact with each other, and I think form almost a nest of joy and of generosity and of kindness and of caretaking, almost kind of a safe spot.
I think you kind of in that relationship, or in how they all act in relation with each other, you bring us back to I don't know, our own location, if we listen, our own locations in the world, and our own relation to things in the world. And this is what I feel is so deeply like contemplative about the work. You have to stop and think about those things, rethink about. I mean, precisely because of this moment in the world that we're living, your book lands in this extraordinary historical moment, right? And this kind of potent political time where all of the underpinnings of the society have become exposed, at least to some. I mean, some of us understood that, and like these characters worked through that. But for us, it's the peril in this moment rises in a kind of potency, and what the novel, I think, speaks to is the resolve of people to rise to meet that peril.
Yes.
Am I reading right?
Yes, you're reading right.
Okay.
I'm writing right.
You're writing right. You're writing right. I swear. I swear you are. So there's a lovely chapter, chapter 9, called Formation. And I and it's full of lectures and stories by geese. Talk
Hmm.
about that, because I just love this part. I love every part, but this part was incredible too. So please speak a bit about that.
I was out hanging out with my friend and my elder Doug Williams from Curve Lake one day, and a flock of geese flew overhead. And he said they were honking, and he said those geese are migratory geese. And I asked him how he knew, and he said I could tell by the sound. That's the sound that I heard when I was a boy. That's what geese sounded like. The ones that stay in the city all year, their register is different.
Yeah.
And so that sort of blew my mind. And I
Yeah.
got thinking about, I think as a scholar who thinks about colonialism a lot, I tend to center humans.
Hmm.
And so I started to think about what is the impact of environmental degradation, of settlement, of
Mhm.
colonialism on geese. And the more I started to think about that, I started to learn about an incredible relationality that geese have in formation, where they work
Mhm.
together in this assembly, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and
Mhm.
they end up traveling thousands and
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of miles on a yearly
Yeah.
basis. So that became super interesting to me, sort of as from the perspective of an organizing someone.
Life.
Yeah.
Organized life. Yeah.
And then it became a pretty it exists in reality. It's metaphorically very rich, it's conceptually
Mhm.
very rich. There's this idea that geese live in the city, they live in the bush. At this time of year, they're flying overhead in that formation going south. They're a nation that has also been harmed, and they're here
Mhm.
anyway. And it's a world
Mhm.
that, despite the fact they fly over my head every fall making noise, that I can
Yeah.
easily ignore
Mhm.
or erase or not give thought to. And so the raccoons and the geese in this book are also markers for those worlds that that I sometimes don't see,
Mhm.
because there are Black people, indigenous people, we are constantly building worlds that white people don't see. We're
Mhm.
building worlds on top of worlds,
Mhm.
no matter if they get destroyed, no matter if we
Yes.
don't know what I'm doing, no matter if we don't have any materials to build the worlds. Our
Yeah.
ancestors and the ones that became for us have just done this incredible job of world building. And you see that with
Mhm.
the geese as well. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to I don't know. I just fell down this geese
Well, I fell with you.
hole,
I
and
could tell.
yeah, it became very, very interesting to me,
Yeah.
both the raccoons and the
No.
geese.
Yeah, but that's wonderful. The relation you make between, it's true. Yes, that there are indigenous people and Black people and um, people who have been massacred, killed, whose daily lives are full of violence in a way, or the overarching um, regime of violence on those lives, and yet people make life constantly. As a matter of fact, they have to be really quick about making life,
Yeah.
right? They're really agile about making life. They have to move around with a certain knowledge of the world um, that we have to count, write down, right?
Mhm.
I was so fascinated by and making it beautifully too, actually, right? Making that life beautifully, because
Mhm.
what is a life if
Mhm.
not a beautiful thing, right? And people
Yes.
re repurpose that life constantly, as we know. So this is probably why I found formations so fascinating, like the dynamics and the calculations of getting a community, getting them somewhere, and getting them intact, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and many of the sentences just stand out for me in this account, like we've witnessed the loss of so many of our relations, we've made flyways through grief. That is like solidly beautiful thing
Mm.
to observe, you know. We've made flyways through grief. I think if you hadn't written another sentence, that would be cool. Right? And in another piece in that section, in one of the lectures, someone counsels, uh, pack it in your bones, find it along the way, and everything gets left. Talk about that one. I love that one too. Pack it in your bones, find it along the way, and everything gets left.
I think it's a very particular way of living that I see, that I've seen elders who know how to live in the bush, who know how to live those old ways, who are constantly in motion. Which is an incredible amount of work. It's an incredible commitment. You can't take possessions with you. It's a life that is very much, the meaning of life doesn't come from things or what you own. It comes from how you live. And so you have to pack your things in your bones. You have to be what's important to you and what's meaningful and what you believe, because that's all there is. That's what your life is about. And that's such a very different way of living, than life in capitalism. But it's also something that I think those that are on the margins have to live that way as well, or choose to live that way, and choose to find joy, and choose to make life anyway, and choose to find the humor in the interstitial spaces, and choose to make a life that's worth living.
Yeah. That's the other part of this book. This book is very funny too.
Oh, thank you.
it's like there are these really, incredibly kind of, and funny on all kinds of registers, right? Funny with the kind of knowledge that the characters have, on their knowledge of the world, that capitalist world, that colonial world, and how they bypass and short circuited. So it's full of the humor of that kind of short circuiting.
Right. Yeah.
That's really quite lovely. Would you mind reading a teeny bit again for us, just so that you can hear the language? Yeah.
Sure. Sabe is sitting on their porch watching the birds at the feeder. There is a baby grackle yelling at its parent because it wants bird seed. The parent grackle is hurrying up to the feeder. They get to the seeds, chew the seeds, and put them in baby's mouth, over and over. Baby grackle just yells at parent grackle. The tenderness is gone. Only relentless irritation remains, and staying becomes another word for love. Sabe is thinking about this in the context of their own life and then projecting their ideas onto the grackles. The parenting of humans is relentless. The continuous infusion of unconditional love, the patience in the face of the same mistakes over and over, the patience with the constant need for attention, narcissism. It's why they retreat here, to the bush, to the cabin with the bird feeders and the endless supply of seed. The humans think they are off doing something important, and they are, just not in the way that would satisfy human expectations. Things seem pretty messed up for the humans, to be honest. The white ones, who think they are the only ones, have really structured the fucked upness in a seemingly impenetrable way this time. A few good ones get their footing, and then without continual cheerleading succumb to the shit talk. It is difficult to know where to intervene or how to start. There are embers, but the wood is always wet, and the flames go out so damn easy. Everyone thinks the ancestors have all the answers, but sometimes, most times, it takes more. Sabe keeps their special things in red cloth, safety pinned to their undershirt. A tiny piece of flat cedar, a single strand of sweetgrass, a pinch of tobacco.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I found each thing here I had to, you know, ponder, right? Because I think
Mm.
there's such wisdom in what you've written here. Yeah. You know, you are incredibly kind of prolific artist. You work across many genre, and can you talk for a moment about that and say how um, how you make artistic decisions, like uh, as to the material and the genre? What things you want to put where? Yeah.
I think very naturally and at the core of me, I just don't fit into disciplines or institutions or genres, um, or artistic disciplines. And I've tried at different points in my life, because I think that you can do powerful work from within those spaces, but it's
Mm,
not the way I think, and it's not the way my mind works, and it's not. I find it very difficult to sort of generate work in those spaces. I think that architecture or scaffolding or the spine of my practice, whether I'm doing academic work or literary work or music, is the same. And
mhm.
I think um, the academic work tends to be very deliberate, where I think that I'm not going to do it again, and then something irritates me, or I can't shut up, or I
Yeah,
want to intervene.
yeah.
I think the literary work becomes very freeing, because I think there's so much. I mean, you can show, you can build worlds, and I got to live in them the whole time I'm writing, and I really
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think performance for me is, in some ways, it's an act of me putting myself back together, and like,
Mm,
being an academic and being a writer, you can really like live
yeah.
just in your head,
Yeah.
and performing forces me back into my body to connect with an audience in real time,
Right.
to pro- to project, to be like, to step into the room like I'm supposed to be there, and to step up to the mic like I have
Hmm.
every right to be there and to tell my story, and to practice that over and over again, I think has been good for me. I think I like this idea of repetition, of when it's a song or when it's lyrics, you're saying that poem or you're singing those lyrics over and over and over again
Hmm.
on tour all across Canada or the US. And at some point in that practice, I always, a new meaning pops out at me.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a very interesting embodiment. And that doesn't happen so much with writing, because
Hmm.
I don't read the same passages over and over and over again, because the
Right.
music, I think, adds an emotional element, because the performance is
Uh-huh.
connecting people emotionally. And it's a group of people that might come to a bar to hear a show, that would never come to a lecture,
Right.
or come to a literary festival. So it's also a way of connecting with a different audience. So I think that kind of the philosophical background, the conceptual background, the ethical background is all the same, and then how it
Hmm.
manifests itself, is actually a bit of a it's a bit of a mystery to me. Um,
Yeah. But from what you just said, it feels like the performance um, feeds the other
yes,
work
yeah, that's very
more
true.
than the other work, the performance, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Kind of embodiment of word or sound or something.
And
Um,
also because I think I've come to performance later in life, and so it's interesting to go back to being an emerging artist in a different discipline, because you aren't good at it yet, and the relearning of something in later life, I think, was also revealed something to me that fed into my other work.
yeah. Or maybe, yeah. Interesting thing too, of course, is that like who made these partitions, right? And maybe you're just against the partition, and because these things sort of bleed into each other, they leak into each other, right? Like water in some ways.
For
And
me, they do. I think I feel like I'm just being Leanne, and I'm not trying to disrupt all of this, these disciplines and
yes, no,
genres.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
but
I bet I end up doing that.
yeah, but they do different things too. I mean, I think this novel, and your works that are literary kind of do another work,
Mm,
or and do another work for people, right, who
yeah,
maybe can't have you present, but it it does a job, it does a work in terms of
yeah,
just laying that down on white paper,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, for the record. For the record, yeah, that's just wonderful. um there's a sleeplessness to the novel.
Mhm.
What is that about? What is that? There's a sleepless movement.
I think thinking about the harm that colonialism has caused on intimate spaces
Mm,
is one that it impacts our sleep, and
yeah.
that's whether it's through the kind of horrors of residential schools,
Mhm.
or it's anxiety, or it's depression, or it's substance use. It interrupts that restful period where you regenerate yourself, and
Mhm.
in my culture where you dream, and
Mhm.
where you communicate with spiritual beings and
Mhm.
ancestors. So it is disruptive to that relationship, of the relationship to yourself and to your body, and it's disruptive to the relationship with that bigger spiritual cosmology. And
Mhm.
so many of the characters in this book have problems finding sleep,
Yes.
and they have little tricks um,
Yeah.
to overcome those sleep issues.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you really trace the the depth of uh of that terror, on the I mean, it lacerates one's intimacies.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not simply a sort of formal room you walk into.
yeah,
It permeates life in a particular way, and one is always negotiating,
yeah,
um, or one is always resisting it and trying to make something else, trying
yes,
to make something else out of it. But it's pervasive, and so one always has to attend in some way to it,
yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that just struck me, that kind of ceaselessness, a kind of sleeplessness. It just strikes me too that were we to sleep, that would really be the end anyway, right? You know what I mean? Were you to really sleep with that, right?
Yeah,
Sleep with that would be to completely ingest it in some
yeah,
way, right?
yeah,
Be
yeah,
catatonic from it in a way, right? Totally.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I think it's a marvelous, marvelous novel. And I think it's the kind of work, like I say, you have to keep going to and thinking through and thinking with all the time. And I think it lays down a kind of marker here. Um, and that it couldn't have been written in any other way in
Mm.
some ways. I think, yeah. Well, I'm going to stop blathering and see if there are any questions from the audience. From the audience. Let me see. Uh, uh, Forgive me the technology. Um, Someone writes, thank you for this. Oh, well, unrushed discussion. Okay, fine. But that the character Minden Moyen thinks about ceremony and neuroplasticity in an interesting way. Can you please speak to the ideas of ritual, ceremony, practice, repetition, and time? You've spoken a little bit about it, but
Yeah, I think I wanted to show sort of the brilliance of of Mindamoya and the expansiveness of her thought and how, or their thought, and how they aren't sort of just your average old person, that they're engaged in all kinds of research from all kinds of different bodies of knowledge. They're internationalist in their thinking. And so the idea was just that a lot of our old ceremonies and a lot of ceremonies from indigenous people in all of the continents were very repetitious. They were long in duration. They required kind of a meditative presence, and that there's scientific research that talks about how that generates and regenerates the parts of the brain that are capable of empathy.
Mhm.
And so those ceremonies are often really difficult for people like me to participate in, because that skill set is something that takes a lot of practice, and it's something that's very anti it's anti-capitalist. It's anti to almost how the whole world is structured right now. So Mindamoya is trying to bring that back in IKEA, because that's where they are.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Another question here. So you mentioned bringing characters with you across different works. Um, how do you decide when a character or being belongs in another piece of writing?
Well, I feel like they decide, because they become such a part of my thinking, that they just kind of come and invite themselves in. They, as I'm writing the story, they're just there. I think I fall in love with some of my characters, and I want more of them. And I think that's maybe that's the decision. I wasn't finished with I wasn't ready to discard any of those relationships that I had developed with those characters. It didn't feel finished.
Hmm. Hmm. So they sort of they're living with you,
They're living with
and
me.
they might
Yep.
appear. They might appear some other time.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Here's a question from. Oh, I forgot who asked that other question. I'm very sorry. Forgive me for not saying your name. Uh, but this from Christine. Leanne, could you expand on the idea of relationships with someone or something lost? I was so struck by this. Okay.
I think in the book I explore that with
Mm-hmm.
with Edik, with Caribou.
Mm-hmm.
And so, although that being isn't here physically anymore, we still have people, Anishinaabe people, that belong to Caribou clan. There
Mm-hmm.
are still other indigenous people, like Dene people, like Wiccan people, who know Caribou, who have stories, who have songs, who hunt. The Caribou still exists in the world and is still very threatened. So it's still possible for me to have a relationship with those beings.
Mm-hmm.
It's an international relationship. It's a relationship that requires acting in solidarity, um, and there's still little bits of it here too. So I think that I wanted to start to reclaim and start to bring back and start to explore what it means to have a relationship with something that is gone or something that has passed, outside of just grief,
Mm-hmm.
outside of just loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Another question from Kay. Thank you for this insightful and expansive discussion. Can you talk about your creative decisions around gendering and non-gendering your characters? What worlds are you gesturing toward?
um well, I feel like in Anishinaabe Moin, you have to, the word mashkawaje isn't gendered, and you can gender things, but you have to be more deliberate in our language. And so I wanted to take that concept and write in English, where everybody is they, them, where all readers can see themselves in the story, can easily insert themselves in the story. All genders can easily insert themselves in the story. So different people, I do think I've misgendered Mindemoya several times in this conversation, because I do think of them as she, but you don't have to. And they are not. So it's something that it became tricky because English doesn't deal with gender diversity very well. It can be clunky, but it also, I think, made the story expansive, and it made me think very carefully about when I was going to gender a character, why I was going to gender that character, and what I had to develop the characters, I guess, in different ways.
Right. Here's one that, we were speaking earlier about, but not on view. Someone asking, would you be willing to discuss your desire to create sound recordings alongside this written text? Yes, talk about that.
I have created sound recordings alongside this text. It's called the Noopiming sessions, and it's available on Bandcamp. There are 4 readings where my sister, Ansley Simpson, who's a singer-songwriter in Toronto, and also James Bunton, we recorded original soundtracks, and we're working on a video for Solidification that'll be out in a few weeks, that was by Sammy Chian from East Vancouver. I also have a record coming out this winter on You've Changed Records, and it's called Theory of Ice. And it's from that middle section of Mashkawaje's writing. It's very much not spoken word, and it's not readings, it's songs. I'm singing 4 of the songs and speaking 4 of the songs. So it's not really a companion piece like the Noopiming sessions, but it is, it does share lyrics with the book.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Someone here says, you spoke about reciprocity. How do you see reciprocity changing the way we are living? That's a big one to end on, sort of. I think probably the questioner and all of us have to kind of really consider that one. That was
I think if we were to be serious about reciprocity and we were to center it, it would be a massive radical system change. And it would have to be in conversation with many of the other movements. And it is in conversation with many of the other movements, the abolition movement, Black Lives Matter, all of those kinds of things. It's about building a radically different world to live in.
Yeah. Do you think we're closer to that than not at this moment?
I think that I'm supposed to say yes.
No.
Because I mean, hope is a practice, but I feel like I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think that we're much farther away from it, and that we've moved much farther away from it in my lifetime. Things in many ways feel much worse, and it's but we've just had a summer of revolt. Things happened that I never dreamed would happen in my life. Massive amounts of Black brilliance organized in our streets and did things that were just unimaginable to me. So I think that there are moments and movements, and there are, in these interstitial spaces, there is hope.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Yes, and you are right about this moment, these last several months that have brought so many people out into the street in in utter resistance of so many practices,
Yeah.
so many of these, colonial, neo-colonial practices, neoliberal practices that said sort of wait and see, yeah, and have been made quite bare. I think that will your book does a number of things. I think it teaches us how to read, that this thing that we do as writers, you and I, and probably so many people who are listening and who are with us too. I think it's shaken that up too, and I think your book arrives in this incredible moment of how to read, like how to read the world, how to truly read the world if you want to read. Um, and I think we'll be reading it for a long time. And I think that's the point. That's the point of it, and that's the point of good writing. And so I want to congratulate you for that. And mwah, big love. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. To hear more events like this one, please visit our website at writersfest.bc.ca.